Well, folks, it's Thursday, it's 9 p.m, and of course that means it's time for Jungle Drums. I'm joined this evening again with my good friends Gimboyd.
Hello.
And, of course, Sergeant J.
Hola.
How's it going, boys? How are we doing this evening?
Wunderbar. And how are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. Just, well, you know, just schooling away. They were on strike once again today, and so sure enough, I was like the only person from my class that bothered showing up, and that suited me just fine. I was just working away on Android Studio, so I'd finally got my my app, my program working correctly. I'd made some silly little, you know, syntax errors here and there, and
It happens.
well, it was just a case of I couldn't install it at home because we're using a version that is so old. You know, because you can imagine, right? The school environment, they have to have it locked. You know, they can't perform updates and whatnot.
Exactly.
So it was now forward to such a point that even if I was trying to install that older version, it would still install a couple of updates to the SDK, and it was just throwing everything off. So it was. Right, anyway. This evening, we've got a nice little mix, actually. A bit of gaming news, quite a bit of tech news, and then, well, I suppose the last piece is a bit of both, really. Quite an interesting piece. But anyway, let's kick this off, shall we? Our first news item is from the... Oh, I needed to actually take that off. That was supposed to only be the one time. Right, there we go. It's from WCCF Tech, and this is about Shadow Warrior 2. Now, Shadow Warrior 2, of course, had... launched in October on PC, and you know it was huge. It did really, really well. Devolver Digital, and Flying Wild Hog, who made the game. You know, I'm a big fan of Devolver Digital. I follow them on Twitter, and you know I like seeing the work they do. You know, there's a lot of great quality games that they've made. Well, anyway.
Genital jousting.
Well, yeah, and there's that. Yeah, there's that as well. But anyway, so that game came out on PC in October, and you know they did really, really well. Basically, the statistics show that in the first week, they sold 4 times as many as they did from the original reboot of the 2013 version. But so us console gamers, you know, we've just been looking at envy. You know, this game that just looks just amazing. You know, there's quite good story to it. Action. Is it fair to say it's also quite difficult from what I've seen?
Seems to be.
Yeah, it looks...
It's got your various difficulties, but yeah, standard is pretty good.
But so basically, the official Twitter account had stated before that, look, they were aiming for a spring release. And sure enough, just last month, it did pass certification. And so basically it's going to be hitting Xbox One and PS4 this spring. You know, so it looks like it's coming soon, and the version that's coming to console is actually going to include all of the DLC in one nice little bundle.
Which is always nice.
So basically what happened was, you know, there was all this what ifs, and so basically the latest issue of official PlayStation Magazine mentions May 16th as the actual release date. And so that's 5 days away. You know, but that magazine says it, but I haven't seen any confirmation anywhere else, you know, from Devolver, from the official Twitter account and whatnot. But if WCCF Tech is saying that, then I would pretty much reckon that it's probably true. What about you guys? Have you seen much of the game?
I've seen a bit. Looks interesting, but I've played too many shooters, so I probably won't be jumping on it myself.
That's fair enough. What about yourself, Jay? Are you familiar with it?
I personally don't have a clue all about this, so...
Okay. Not a problem.
Something I'll end up getting as a result.
The only reason I really know about it is because I'm quite a fan of Man vs. Game. You know, one of the old school Twitch streamers who was streaming back when it was just on TV. You know, and I like him, but just because of his story, right? I mean, he's overcame depression. Well, he's still actually trying to, he lives with depression. But, he's went through addiction, all sorts of things. He's a really, just a real man, if you know what I mean. He's been through a lot of different things. But anyway, he was playing it, and, so I was watching him, and, it just, he can get quite angry if a game is quite brutal, and it definitely seemed like quite a brutal game as far as difficulty goes, but on PC it was also graphically wonderful. There were some pretty good funny bits in there as well when it comes to like dialogue with characters, so overall it looks like a really cool game, and it's just nice to see that, hey, we're getting some console love, and so now it's going to be available to a much wider audience. And with any luck, maybe it'll run better on Scorpio next year. Maybe, never know.
Just had to get it in, didn't you?
Possibly.
You just had to get it in.
Had to. I'm telling you, once they released that news that it was no longer just about 4K with Scorpio, that it would actually make games run at 1080 better, it just, yeah, I've turned into a complete
We can just get
fanboy.
1080 60 on a console, that would be enough.
Yeah, absolutely. But no, Shadow Warrior 2 releases just around the corner. So there. Let's see, is this also... No, this is from PC Gamer. Right. My next bit of news is from PC Gamer, and this is about a title that I actually still have. I'm pretty sure I still own it on Xbox 360. It was from a few years back. It was on PS3, and it was on Xbox 360. It was a new IP, something that really kind of came out of nowhere. And that game was Vanquish. Well, sure enough, Vanquish is finally coming to PC, and it's going to be launching on Steam later this month. So some of the big things about this game, right? I mean, it was super fast graphically, even on like that old hardware, the 360 and the PS3. It looked amazing. But with a PC release, I mean, we're talking about, okay, keyboard and mouse support for that type of shooter, that's brilliant. Unlocked frame rate, so the more powerful computer you got, the sky's the limit, and it's going to have, obviously higher resolution support. So if you have a 4K display and a video card that can handle it, then you're on a winner. The game itself, I mean, I never finished it. I did play a fair bit of it, but it was just so cool. It was so action packed. The music was quite funky in it. The story was, well, a bit kind of dicey, but it was still interesting. But it was just a really, really, really cool game that was, it was brought to us by Sega. And if you go back, years past, Sega could always, produce quality games. That was something they were always quite good at. But so basically, it's going to be hitting Steam on May 25th. If you've already purchased Bayonetta on PC, remember that was another title that just got relaunched, I think you get 25% off the price of Vanquish. So that's quite, a nice little bonus there for you. But yeah, Vanquish. Did either you guys play much of Vanquish? Or?
I didn't actually. I heard of it, but I never got around to it. But I just looked at the little video clip of it. Something I potentially would be interested in, but never touched it though.
It was very strange, Jay. It was because it was a third-person shooter, and yeah, okay, you could go in the cover and stuff, but the whole kind of key thing of the game was the speed. You could just be sliding around and doing all sorts of crazy things. The weapon choices were brilliant. The bosses, I mean, this is the thing. You'd go through waves and waves of enemies, and then have like some big crazy, like a mech kind of boss that you had to. Yeah. Say destroy weapons on it, destroy its legs and its arms, and it was honestly a game I wish I'd spent more time with. I just have a feeling that something else came along, and that's what ended up kind of tearing my time away from it. I don't know if it was World of Tanks, or I'm sure it was before Destiny, but something came along and basically I just never got around to continuing on with it.
It's fair enough, but it's probably Tanks. I don't know if I'd get it, to be fair. might have to look at it at some point when I've got through my backlog of games that are still sitting there,
Yeah.
gathering dust.
That's understandable. What about yourself, Kim? Had you played on 360?
Yes, I had.
he might have just went AFK for a minute.
He might have done.
Yeah, but hey, Vanquish. It was a very different game, quite unique in its own right, and again, it's just nice to see. It's something that's been opened up again to a wider audience. This is a game from years ago on the 360, and there's a lot of PC gamers out there that they don't touch consoles. Yes, you can joke about the whole PC Master Race thing, but there's honestly a lot of folk who just think, well, I'm not going to waste my time on a console. I've got a kick-ass PC. Why would I? So this is great. These are there's folk out there that missed this game the first time around, and they'll be able to pick it up on Steam on May 25th. So not
I'm
bad.
back, by the way.
Oh, good.
What happened?
I was just asking you if you had played Vanquish on 360.
I'd only managed to play the demo at the time. There was many other games coming out at the same sort of time. So it was fun, but I don't know.
I'm pretty sure I picked it up used. I'm sure I didn't get it at release. I'm sure it was later down the line, and I'd picked it up for like a bargain, like oh god, I don't know if it was like maybe one of the Boxing Day sales or something, and
Yeah, because it originally didn't sell very well when it came out, but then it got picked up after by a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, it was one of those games that I don't think they marketed it very well, and it did kind of there was no hype, there was no big lead up to it. Excuse me, and like you said, I think a lot of folk just hadn't really heard about it. I think console gamers, they've kind of gotten this habit of there's franchises that they know, love, and trust, and when something new, a different IP comes, for a lot of us, we go, ooh, something different. But I think there's still a lot of folk that are like, oh no, never heard of it, I'm not going to touch it.
I think the thing is, we've been burned a few times, and there's also the fact that games are so expensive. Dog, can you not play with a squeaky toy? Did that on purpose, didn't you? Yeah. Anyway, yeah. I mean, games are so expensive, even more so here than they are like across the pond.
Yeah.
I mean, they pay $60, we pay 50 quid. That's actually a markup.
True.
Actually, it's more like 55 now. It's the lowest price for new AAA games. So. Yeah.
No, they're creeping up.
Catch up. So people tend to go, well, I'm not going to risk that amount of money on something that might not be something I like. So I'm going to stick with the thing I know I like. Buy more Call of Duty.
Yeah. No, I mean, that makes sense.
Please.
It makes sense when you put it that way, that just how it is. It's a kind of
I think that's the biggest thing, to be fair.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. This fear of the unknown, especially when you're talking about a relatively, okay, for some folk it's not a lot of money, but I mean, it's quite a large investment. I mean, there's nothing worse than, none of us would just take 60 quid out of our wallet, rip it up, and throw it in the bin. We're not, none of us are in that kind of financial position where we can just do that. And that's the problem by taking a risk on a game that you know nothing about.
We're not Donald Trump.
So no, but it'll be interesting to see. What I will be personally interested to see is after it releases, will be how it runs. Because even so, they're saying all this stuff about, oh yeah, unlocked frame rates and resolutions and whatnot. That's all fine and dandy as long as it's coded well, as long as it's optimized. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Bayonetta's done quite well, right? There's no major...
I've not heard anything bad about it.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone just says this is the definitive edition.
Yeah. Yes, that's not too bad.
So yeah, I know I was never big on Bayonetta myself. But
So, well, that was another
That
one
style of game I
I
don't like.
have, but I never got around to finishing it. In fact, I think I actually got Bayonetta and Vanquish at the same time. I'm sure I did, now that I think about it.
doubling up on the platinum.
Yeah, well, I think it might have been those, and maybe it was, what was it, Metal Gear Rising? Revengeance or whatever?
Oh, yeah.
I
that
think-
one.
Yeah.
That one I like.
That was a good game.
I must have completed that about 12 times.
Yeah, it just
Loved it.
I was always a Metal
Which
Gear
is insane.
addict. I mean, I just loved.
That's Platinum just drawing from a bit from Kojima's madness and going, what can we do with this?
Oh, that's a
Make that
great.
a completely insane spectacle fighter.
Oh yeah, and that's a great link. Pretty things. That is. Yeah, I've seen similar things to that. It is. It's really really nice to, have this type of little bit info there where you can kind of look at what's kind of coming up in the year ahead. So that's a great link. Great link indeed. But yeah, so there we go. Vanquish. Hey, it's coming out. Shadow Warriors 2. It's a couple of things that are coming out shortly. Right. It's time to dive into some tech. Now,
This is where I sit back and listen.
I sit back and listen. Now, we've talked about AMD quite a bit on Jungle Drums. It's not that we're AMD fanboys by any means. I mean, I've owned.
It is right.
Well, yeah, I was about to say. Well, I'm turning Jay into one. We don't talk about it in a biased way. Yes, I've owned AMD in the past. I mean, and I had a full AMD system with the CPU, and same with the video cards. I've kind of went back and forth between Nvidia and AMD, and it's just been an exciting time for AMD with the Ryzens that came out, really offering high performance for a relatively low price compared to the Intel counterpart. So this bit of news is really, really exciting. The newest Ryzen top-of-the-line chips, obviously, they run quite fast. They have a 8-core, but with simultaneous threading addressing, or whatever the hell AMD calls it. So it's a 16-core effective. 8 physical, but 16 effective cores. So for stuff like this, streaming, video editing, that's a lot of horsepower. In our money over here, it costs a little over 300 quid for the processor. And the equivalent, or comparable Intel version is over 1,000, right? So it's a big deal, right? Big deal. Well, this latest bit of news, I just saw this today, and it just really got me excited. I mean, it's not to say that I'm going to be getting one, but it still gets me really excited. But anyway, this is from WCCF Tech, and this is about a new enthusiast level of Ryzen chip that's coming out, and it's codenamed Whitehaven. And basically, Whitehaven is going to be a 16-core CPU, as in 16 physical cores, but with the simultaneous addressing, so it's 32 effective, right? So that is huge. I mean, this is, it is, and it's a good thing that you bring up there, Jay, because for gaming, it's overkill. There's very few games out there nowadays that even use up all 4 cores of a quad core, right? So I mean, for gaming, you don't tend to see a big difference. But what you do see the difference is nowadays the streaming culture of so many people want to play a game and stream it, and this is where those cores help, because those other cores end up used for the encoding, for the broadcasting. Same with video editing. YouTube's really popular nowadays, and people of all ages are trying to edit their clips and render videos. And anyone who's rendered video knows it takes a while. I mean, even on my PC, an i7, which is running quite fast, the minute I push the render button, I might as well go watch a film or something, because it's going to take at least an hour. Excuse me, depending on how long the video is. But so anyway, these Whitehaven CPUs, right? 16 cores, 32 threads. They're going to support quad channel DDR4 memory, so that's another big deal. Again, not necessarily for gaming, but for productivity, for any kind of design. We're getting into a realm of chip that is enthusiast, and it's built or aimed at us gamers and streamers and YouTubers, but you could use it in a commercial sense as well. It's just it's quite amazing, and it's going to be no slouch either. With the clock speed, they're saying it's going to have a boost clock speed of about 3.6 gig, which is decent. Knowing AMD, they'll probably be able to overclock a fair bit. It definitely looks really, really quite interesting. They're going to have different levels of this Ryzen Whitehaven. They're talking about there's actually a they're also going to release a 12 core, so a 24 thread version. So obviously that's going to be a little bit more, less expensive. But I mean, it's still, a step above the current top of the line Ryzens. There's even rumors of 10 and 14 cores, but there's no actual evidence or no hard evidence of those existing. But it's quite interesting. They're aiming this against the Whitehaven is going up against the Skylake 8X basically, and it's got just a lot of stuff going on. If we look at the level 3 cache right now, if you're familiar with the way CPUs work, the whole point of if we really break it down, right, a CPU does all the math, does all these things, and basically when you load a game or something, right, it puts stuff in memory, it puts things in RAM. And what ends up having to happen is the CPU has to actually communicate with the RAM and fetch things, right? It has to go back and forth. Obviously, it's doing this, millions of times a second. But what cache is on-die memory, right? So it's almost like, imagine if you're trying to reach something for, say, a toolbox, right? If RAM is your toolbox, the cache is like a tool belt. Right? It allows you to, if you're always going to be using that hammer, instead of putting the hammer back in the toolbox every time, you just put it in your tool belt. And that's what cache does. Any kind of items that are going to be used quite often get stored in cache. So it's a hell of a lot quicker. So this is where it's quite interesting, because the current Ryzen chips have 16 megabytes of level 3 cache, which is great. They've also got level 1 and level 2, but we're just looking at this level 3 number at the minute. They've got 16 megabytes, and that's quite a large amount. These new Ryzens are going to have 64, and that is just, it's ridiculous. And this is
bigger number.
That's 60 for cache. That is huge. When you look at hard drives, Gim, in the past, they used to kind of talk about the cache of a hard drive as well before the days of SSDs, and bigger was the better. Like, you used to pay quite a bit of money to get a hard drive with an 8 megabyte cache. It was huge deal. Then when Seagate, I think it was Seagate, the first one to come out with a 16 megabyte one, people freaked out. It was like, holy crap. Then Western Digital came out with a 32, and so on and so forth. So to have 64 megabytes of level 3 cache on the CPU is huge. And then, of course, this quad channel DDR memory, because the current Ryzens only have dual. Again, doesn't make a huge difference in gaming, but when we're talking about production, the amount of memory bandwidth that opens up to you is just amazing.
I was never good at DDR.
Always one, isn't there? Always one. Always.
Well, this is about as much as I
Dance Revolution. Just in case anyone out there missed the reference, that's what DDR. Not, not just memory, but Dance Revolution.
People watching this must know.
You'd hope. What? Okay.
This is clearly for Dance Revolution fans.
Jay,
continue.
if you had... No, you're fine, Kim. With Jay, pricing, there's no way this is going to be as cheap as the 300 quid Ryzens. No, surely not.
Well, if we were to take it from a potential of this could be, I don't know, in terms of all the actual specs being double of that of the 8 cores, I reckon you could be looking at 500, 600 quid for these at least.
Yeah.
I don't see these being cheap at all, because I see these for people either A, have money to throw away, or B, as you say, are big into these sort of production based jobs, streaming, all that sort of stuff, because this sort of hardware is not required for just simple gaming. Even in 4K it would not be needed, as you say. This is for streaming purposes, this is for production purposes. Just be good for...
The only way that that amount of horsepower becomes an issue in gaming is the more video cards you add. right? Because
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you know yourself, if you've got 2 video cards in SLI, you know, it actually takes quite a bit of resources from the CPU. That's where, quite often in gaming, the CPU can become the bottleneck. Well, nowadays, you can go triple or even quad SLI. And, like, I know for a fact that, I mean, even so, I've got an i7. It's a 4th gen i7, and quite frankly, if I had a quad SLI in there, it would make the CPU sweat because it's only a quad core with hyper-threading. So...
Why you'd need a quad SLI is beyond me, but...
Well, no, yeah, I mean, most folk wouldn't. I mean, this is the thing. I think nowadays, see the people that run quad SLI, I don't even think they run it for gaming. They're using it to farm bitcoins.
Probably are,
you know,
to be fair. I can't see it. But, yeah, as you say, even with that just taken into account, I see this more of that high-end sort of streaming thing, production. It could even well be used, especially with the quad support, channel support, for things like I want to say stuff like modeling, rendering, and stuff like you say, rendering, all those sort of production-based things. And I think a key point there is the wording of enthusiast. That really sort of says what they're aiming for in terms of a market. Because, as I said, from a gaming perspective, from my perspective, I wouldn't, unless I was going to try and break some stupid records, which again is what these will probably end up being used for. You get these competitions, or Nitro call them, or whatever.
Yeah.
Try and break these records. That's what I see them being used for. Is that or high-end streaming? Yeah, I've got no need to have one. I haven't got a 4K PC. I haven't got a 4K monitor, and even that I think would be overkill with 4K. But obviously they're I think, as you say, with computing, they try and keep pushing up this power increasing and everything. And the thing is, if this does happen, a game's going to be looking at trying to put more power into them to make use of these processors. And how's that going to affect things as well? That's what we've got to look at. Because there's a lot of new, say even GPUs, come out with all these cool things, but then barely any games use them because they've come out whilst game developers either A, didn't know about them, or B, haven't utilised them due to how late they are. Or do you think that is this aimed at a potential future market for games? Can games make use of this as well? Or is it geared, as you say, mainly towards the sort of streaming side of things, rendering videos for streams?
Well, it's just even the whole way they're classifying it as, their enthusiast range.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, Intel, their equivalent is what they call the Extreme Editions. And those are all the processors that all cost in excess of $1,000, just for the damn chip. I mean, okay, yeah, they're tight, they're sweet. But these Extreme Editions, it's like you're saying, they don't necessarily give you more gaming performance. But, yeah, they give you more performance in all these other areas.
Oh, yeah. It's only so far you can go gaming performance before it becomes negligible, before it becomes... on like a graph perspective, where you suddenly just got this massive peak, and then it just sort of flatlines or drops or whatever. You just there'll be a certain point where increasing the power will not make a difference. It just won't. But be interested to see what they price it at, and be interested to see what comes of it in terms of future perspectives, future prospects. For games, for streaming, for PC enthusiasts, for building, for competition builds, for breaking records, overclockings, all this sort of stuff.
No, I think you're right.
How far they could go with it.
I think the pricing is going to be key. I mean, okay, on one hand, one of the things that they're saying could possibly happen here is this could just come out and actually obliterate everything out there. And if that's the case, then holy crap, finally AMD's done it. The last time AMD basically delivered a knockout blow to Intel was 14 years ago when they came out with the Athlon 64. I mean, that was when the Athlon 64 first came out. It was light years ahead. It was just, such a great chip. I mean, basically it was the first. Athlon beat Intel, if my memory serves me correctly, to the 64-bit processing market, at least in a consumer level, not commercial, not business. And their server platform, but I'm pretty sure for home users, Athlon, beat them there. So if this comes out and it is actually the flippin' most powerful CPU available, the thing that scares me is that then they could price it really, really high. Because, you know, why the hell not, right? If this is the best thing that's out, they possibly could. But I just, at the same time, you know, the other part of me is like, well, wait a minute though. That's not AMD's MO, right? They don't do that. They've always been trying to give a less expensive alternative. So I'm hoping, like you say, it's no doubt going to be more expensive than the current ones, but hopefully not into that 4 figures region. You know, I mean, even because if you look at, was it the FX 9590s or whatever it was, the chips were crap, but when those first came out, I'm sure they were like 800 quid or something. They were ridiculously overpriced, and the performance just wasn't there. So they in the past, they have been known to misprice things. I just hope that they don't in this case.
Part of me doesn't really care too much about the price because likelihood of me buying something.
Yeah, I know. Yes, same.
But obviously, for people that do want to get it, then that would be a factor, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And it would be, as I say, it would be interesting to see what they would put for the price.
Absolutely. No, I mean, all this talk about Ryzen over the last few months, I mean, I'm the same. And I know that, you know, if I was in a position to build a new PC, it would definitely be a Ryzen one.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's what I think I'll end up being in the same place. But it's waiting really as well for the Vega GPUs to come out.
Yeah, and that's
not too sure there's much news on that. I'm not too sure they've even got a release date for that yet. Still.
No, it's still all kind of...
They're not listed on anything either, from what I can see.
No, it's all been leaks and rumours and scuttlebutt, and we just don't quite have any absolute hard evidence. I mean, they're passing off a lot of the leaks as, you know, factual, but again, we don't know, because, I mean, there's rumours now, you know, the Vega of just, you know, blowing a 1080 away, which, I mean, if that's the case, and if it's priced, you know, cheaper than a 1080, holy crap, you know, I mean, if
exactly.
You know, if you could get a card for, say, the price of a 1070, or maybe somewhere between the price of a 1060 and a 1070, but it outperformed the 1080, holy
choice
crap,
would be
you know.
pretty sort of obvious there, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Exactly as well with their past processors and GPUs, how they've been able to sort of efficiently and effectively have links between them and software and obviously stuff like that. I'd be interested to see if they do that again, especially if they're trying to compete.
Yeah.
Both of these look like statements of intent to directly compete with and overtake Intel.
Yeah,
both of these.
And it's overdue. You look back, they were always leapfrogging each other. You know, they were outdoing each other, and then now for the last, I mean, I want to say not quite a decade, but probably about a decade, Intel has just been, they've set the standard. AMD have, you know, occasionally tried to do their thing. They went on that whole integrated APU thing. Oh, look, our CPUs have built-in video. How cool. And yeah, it is cool for laptops and tablets and slimline PCs, but, you know, I think a lot of gamers who felt that AMD used to be the lifeblood of gamers, I think they feel like AMD just kind of turned their back on us, you know, and started looking at other things, saying, you know, there's not much money in the gaming market. We'll go for, like, you know, mainstream kind of normal users. That's where we're going to make our money. But fast forward and look now.
Yeah. Oh my God! Who the hell?
It's huge, isn't it?
I care. No, you know, the thing is nowadays too, you got to remember, gaming was taboo. Gaming was the thing that people never admitted to. They all did it. Well, not everyone, but, you know, a lot of folk played games. They were gamers, but it wasn't talked about in public. You know, some people were ashamed. You know, they kept it a secret that they would play FIFA or Madden or whatever the hell it was they liked to play. But now...
Heaven forbid, the Mortal Kombat.
Oh, yeah, see, Mortal Street Fighter, you know, all these things. I mean, because let's be honest, most kids went to the arcade.
Oh, exactly.
Right? Most kids went to a flipping arcade and played video games. But for some reason, you get a bit older.
They didn't have a childhood, you know, but whatever.
Yeah, if they weren't allowed to go, that was child abuse. But now, fast forward, and I mean, it's gamer chic nowadays. You know, it's actually a thing where, you know, at different, like even, you know, high end of high school, was, way back when, if you had been talking about games, you would have been a geek. You would have been hanging out with all those other folk wearing the black jeans and the black shirts and, the unshampooed hair. But nowadays, did you ever have folk like that at school?
I think now.
Yes, you did.
I remember. But, stereotyping and all.
Yeah, but that was that was it. That was the stereotype. A gamer, that's the kind of person who played D&D in the basement, right? It wasn't looked upon in a nice way. But nowadays, it is. It's almost kind of gamer chic, where if something has gamer in the title, it's cooler, right? Everything has to have RGB. Everything has to have tempered glass. There's a lot of things in modern design, right? The way that furniture's designed, the way that consumer electronic equipment is designed, that has actually been taken from the gamer market.
You've got these chairs, haven't you, with their speakers inbuilt.
Yep.
All this sort of stuff. It's crazy. I'd never use one of those ever. I don't see the appeal for it personally, but whatever. Clearly people do.
But yeah, it's just we're in a totally different situation nowadays. But yeah, so Ryzen 16-core Whitehaven is the code name. Whether that's the final name or not, we don't know. But it's coming. We don't know when, but it's coming, and we patiently await it with anticipation. No, we're not prepared. We're not prepared. Work some overtime, Jay.
Yeah, exactly. Start saving. Who needs to go looking to save up for a house or something when I can buy a lovely, powerful Ryzen?
This next piece of news is once again from WCCF Tech. I really do like this website. I never really visited it much in the past, but I gotta say,
they seem to have a lot of good tech. They seem to have a lot of tech news on.
There's a lot of good articles. I mean, obviously, I still personally prefer scholarlygamers.com, but I'm a bit biased. But yeah, the amount of news that comes out of WCCF Tech is absolutely brilliant. This one, I actually
Soul drop. Sorry, carry on.
I read about this on Twitter. And it didn't shock me, but it just made me go, oh man, what a shame. And this is about Square Enix, and they want to sell off IO Interactive, which IO Interactive are famously known, for the Hitman series. Now, I'll be honest, I haven't played the latest Hitman. The whole thing about being episodic, in release. I mean, now you can buy the full version, but that just kind of put me off. That you'd had to pay for episode 1, and then you're going to be waiting for episode 2, and that just put me off. But if we go back, it was an interesting move. There's been a lot of games that have done that, and personally, well, I'll touch on it later. But the original Hitman, loved it. Right, it was really, really old, but loved it. Hitman 2, probably one of my favorites. Contract, blah blah blah. Used to love all of them. And it just makes me wonder, with the reason that Square Enix is considering selling IO Interactive is because of their most recent financial results, right? That basically they're in negotiation with potential investors because it just looks like they've took a huge loss. Basically in yen, they're saying it's almost 5,000 million yen. So I don't know what that converts to, but it's probably quite a lot.
I'm doing it. I'm on it.
Are you on it?
Yeah, carry on.
And this is what I think. That's because of the point you just made about it being an episode form. I honestly think that a lot of people who are looking forward to this latest Hitman, who probably are, well, like me, I played every single one of the Hitman games and loved all of them. But when I saw that this new release was in episode form, how much?
I think it may be about 34 million.
Damn.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. It's going to be the case.
That's a big loss. That's
yeah, it's about that.
That it's no wonder if that studio has effectively cost them a loss of 35 mil, then it's no wonder that they're considering selling it. But I think that you know, it's because of the lower than expected sales for that newest Hitman, and I think the primary reason it didn't sell as much is because they released it in that episode form. I think that just puts people off, because doesn't it kind of introduce a bit of unknown? Like, if you don't know for sure how many episodes there are, you don't know for sure how much you're going to spend for the full experience.
There's other. Well, I'm not too experienced in this. I know Nathan Warfare's what you all know him as. It's a free thing. You got the Telltale games.
Yep, they're all seasons
episode
and
one
episodes.
and all that sort. But obviously that worked, but I'm not too sure how they marketed that, or if they gave you a set definitive number of how many they were. It's an interesting move. I don't know if it was the right move for them, and clearly, well, so I don't know. Clearly, it potentially wasn't the right move for them.
Well, I think that's a point, Jay, is that they looked at a model that was working, and I mean, for those spin-off shows, those spin-off games, that makes sense doing that, because they're based off shows that have seasons.
Exactly.
So that, I mean, it makes sense that that translates for them. But an actual AAA title, you know, one of the... Hey, Snobby Cow, how you doing, bud? How you doing? You know, an actual AAA release to be launched that way, I mean, you know, it's not the same, but it's very similar when you think of, like, how the... Hey, thanks for hitting that follow button, bro. Much appreciated. The train of thought. You know, like, look at Gran Turismo, right? When they did, like, kind of like a little mini episode, or even Metal Gear, when they did like a little mini episode. You know, I think it's one thing doing a teaser or an intro, but having a game like this that effectively, and correct me if I'm wrong, Gim, but the newest Hitman, when we say episode, it was effectively a level, wasn't it? Each episode was like a hit.
Yes.
I mean, okay, said hit was big. It was a big area, and it was a beautiful area.
They made it a large area and various ways to complete it, which was interesting. It was good.
I can almost see.
Yes, sure do have an Xbox, Nobby.
From a Hitman perspective, that's quite interesting actually when you say that, because obviously doing a big hit and everything, that would almost seem like a good thing to have as an episode. They're quite big. There's a lot of planning involved in it. How you want to perform in as many different ways. But again, coming back to almost, if this is sort of based on a model of that, like the Telltale games. Obviously, Telltale games do other stuff, like you got the Batman series, I think, as well. I mean, I almost want to say, because that's how they've done it, they're almost trusted to do that well because they've got that experience. Whereas Hitman, it's something new for them. That Hitman games have always been proper, full-fledged. Here's your game. I haven't played them that much really, but I have heard a lot about them. Matt used to play them quite a lot. He's gone quite big about them. They always did seem good.
They were amazing. I mean, like I remember the original one, right? To put it in perspective, like the best video card at the time was a Voodoo 5, and basically Hitman, that was the card to get if you wanted to play. If you wanted to play it, was the Voodoo 5. It looked amazing back then. But the biggest thing about the Hitman games was the whole kind of concept of you had a target who, okay, you had to assassinate, you know, not a very nice thing, but that was what you had to do. But the way you could do it was crazy. Like, I remember this one Japanese level, right, where, okay, you could go in guns blazing, killing everyone, you know, and get him, or you could try to lure him outside some way to snipe him from afar, or you could try to sneak in and get a hold of the, you know, the fugu fish, that one that if you cut improperly, yeah, that one, yeah, it's fugu in Japanese, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fugu.
Yeah, fugu. So sure enough, you could sneak in. So like you had to like say knock out a delivery guy's, you know, hit him in the head, take his uniform to get in, and then like grab a chef, knock them out, hide the body or whatever, you know, put on their uniform, then walk up to the fugu fish and just go push the button, you know, to basically cut it improperly, and then escape. And then sure enough, you got a cutscene of him going, and you know, it was stuff like that made the game. There was so many ways to approach, you know, a level. It was ridiculous.
That's what I say. you can see why they've sort of gone for that kind of idea of the episodic sort of look at it, but I just think it's a gamble that hasn't paid off for them.
Yeah, no, agreed. What about yourself, Gim? Had you played many of the Hitman games over the years?
I missed the first, really liked the second one, didn't really play much of the ones after that.
Fair enough.
I remember the second one, Silent Assassin was great.
Yeah.
The very first level was just done so well.
Oh, I mean, even
Sneak into a mobster's mansion.
The story was awesome. No, good games. I'm trying to think what one it was that... There was one that I didn't enjoy that much. I'm sure it was... Was there not one that had, like, weird dream sequences, or what was it? I can't remember. I know there was one game that... Was it Contracts? No, it must have been after Contracts, that the difficulty level just ramped up exponentially. Like, you were doing absolutely fine, got a little bit harder, okay, and then all of a sudden you got to a level that was nigh on impossible. And that was irritating. Almost like Oni.
You'll get there in the end.
You can do it.
One day.
That was a great game.
Yeah.
But not what we're talking about.
Be interesting though to see if anybody does invest in this company and if they learn from their mistakes or if they stick with their guns and try to improve the model.
Yes.
Be interesting to see what comes out of it.
Absolutely. Right, our last piece is actually, well, it's from all over the internet. The website I've used as a source is www.intelligencesquaredus.org, right? Just pop it up real quick. Intelligence Squared. Debates.
Almost on your own for this one, because me and Jay didn't get a chance to actually
Yes, Scorpio. The Scorpio. We've talked about Scorpio quite a bit around here. We're looking forward to it. Don't think we'll be early adopters, but we'll be interested to see how it works out.
Unless I win the lottery, I might debate it then. But...
Well, could be.
wait a while and get it.
Right. This story is about... There's an organization called Games for Change, right? And Games for Change is just an amazing organization that basically try to promote positive games, right? I mean, if you get out there and look on the internet, there is some really amazing smaller, indie developer titles. There's one called That Dragon Cancer, I believe is the name of it, or is it That Dragon Called Cancer? I can't. Anyway, and it's just an amazing experience of basically you're going through the author's kind of story of how he lost, I believe, one of his parents to cancer. And it's just a beautifully crafted game. And there's a lot of games out there that are like that, but they get missed because they're not Call of Duty, they're not Battlefield, right? So anyway, Games for Change is an amazing organization that's worldwide. But they've got, I think there's quite a lot of them that are over in the States. But at the same time, there's plenty of folk over in Geneva and whatnot. But anyway, the other night they had a debate, right? They just wanted to have this online debate, to try to educate people, to try to get some arguments, some adult conversation. And yeah, That Dragon Cancer it's a beautiful game, and so this whole debate was about whether video games will make us smarter. Okay, so they had a nice even panel, 2 on each side. For the motion was this professor of brain and cognitive sciences from the University of Geneva, and then also they had the chairman of Games for Change on the for side. Against, they had a director at Stanford University who's in charge of the OCD and impulse control disorders area, whatever, and then another guy who's a director for the Florida State University, the Attention and Training Lab. So anyway, the debate lasted about an hour and 40 minutes. They both presented their sides, and it was really, really quite interesting. Because prior to the debate, they did an online poll to see what the public kind of thought, and it was quite mixed. It was quite close, really. Agreeing with the motion, basically saying yes, video games can improve. I mean, here's some of the arguments. Okay, playing action video games can improve cognitive skills like problem solving, the ability to focus, and reaction times. And these are all skills that in these games basically will carry over into other areas of life, right? They're saying that innovators are creating video games that educate and promote social change. You know, it's not just about running around shooting zombies, but there are other games out there that are kind of promoting different social dynamics. Nowadays, we're getting games introducing transgender characters in a way to raise awareness. You know, same with sexuality.
Oh, nice. That's what I'm talking about.
You know, basically, you know, there's other research that, yeah, there's some research that tries to say video games are related to aggression, but as with most research, it depends kind of which way you slant it. You know, their argument is that, look, despite the reputation, there is no actual link between video games and aggression yet. And also, game-based learning should be embraced by adults and children alike, you know, so that way you get interested in new topics, you know, blah, 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 blah. So that was the for side, you know, and some really strong arguments there. Whereas the against side, you know, is saying that, look, video games are not making us smarter. You know, small areas of improvement in some areas are being offset by other areas not being used. You know, they still harp on that, look, the best way to improve brain function, well, aside from diet and whatnot, is actual exercise, physical motion, because it's getting the blood pumping. They're saying that, look, the cognitive skills that the Foresight are saying, they don't actually exist. There's no proof that they do transfer to, you know, real world activities. One of the big against arguments is that, look, gaming, like anyone who's played World of Warcraft knows firsthand,
very much so.
Gaming can become consuming, leading to social isolation and shirking of real life responsibilities. Has anyone out there forgotten to eat because they were just gaming so hard?
No, my stomach reminds me. Grabs me and goes, you need to eat.
You know, it doesn't happen to me right now, but years ago when I used to play World of Warcraft, that was one of those games that did happen, where we would be doing something and it'd usually be a guildie who'd say, oh, hey, you know, have you had dinner yet? Oh, crap, no, actually I didn't have lunch. You know, it just... So I can get that. I see where they're coming from. And also another thing is that...
Extreme case.
Extreme case, yeah.
That's World of Warcraft.
That's World of Warcraft, yeah. Typical gaming isn't like that. Another argument is that...
World of Warcraft diet is offset by the lack of actual exercise.
Yeah, that's true.
That's why it doesn't work.
Another thing on the against side was that, look, video games typically rely on a binary system, a win or lose. You know, when you think in life and you're interacting, usually there's grey areas where you have kind of moral and ethical dilemmas. Whereas in video games, and I disagree with this point, but in video games they're saying that that's not usually the case. Yeah, because we know, Jay, nowadays there is moral dilemmas in games. There are games that present these types of decisions. But again, this is just from their side. The against side, they were looking at it in a very binary way. But the thing I wanted to bring up is that, look, really, go watch this debate because it wasn't boring. It was quite interesting. But the interesting thing for me was, prior to the debate, they did this online poll. So 40% were for, or saying, yes, video games can improve, you know, brain function. 37% were undecided, and 23% were against. So, I mean, obviously the poll is probably quite a pro-gamer group, but it gives you a nice idea. Hey, 40% for, not 44, and 37 kind of, I don't know, and 23 against. Now, if I pull up the image here, you can see the difference. On the right is post-debate. 53% for, 32% against. So what's funny is, yeah, the against has grown as well, but it's that undecided number. The debate actually took 37% undecided and changed that in the 15. So that gives you an idea of how good that debate was. It was so informative that it did actually make up, the minds for a lot of folk after listening to it. But if it's something that you're interested in reading about, I recommend going to that site, because they've cited all the research that their arguments were based on, and it is very interesting. I mean, I know personally through work, a lot of my peer group were psychologists, and there's a relatively new field in psychology. I can't even remember the name of it, but it's to do with digital media. It's to do specifically with gaming and the effects that it has on brain development in children. And they're trying to look into, these kind of traits, whether it's there's any causality when it comes to aggression or even criminal tendencies. If someone plays GTA during their formative years, are they then going to go out and become a carjacker? It sounds crazy and silly, but they're actual scientists looking into these things. What do you guys think?
Extension.
Are there positive aspects of gaming when it comes to the brain, do you think?
For me, this point of video games rely on binary win/lose mechanisms for evaluating success. I just can't get how
it's very close-minded.
I don't even look at it from a moral perspective from games. I just look at it from a life look at. I mean, I could be wrong with what I say here, and I could be disagreed with, and I could be completely getting the wrong point here. But for me, look at things like exams. Okay, they are technically a win-lose situation. Okay, you've got to get certain grades. Yeah, they're split up into different grade boundaries, like A, B, C's, or whatever. But for example, to get into universities, you have to get certain grades. If you don't put the effort in for those, you don't get those, and that's technically a win-lose situation. If you go for job interviews, you're competing against other people, and it says about evaluating success. You could be amazing at your job. You could have all the knowledge to be as high in a job as you possibly could be, but you could still lose every single interview you go for because somebody else who's like that and who's gone through it all.
I just want to interject, Jay, with Pretty Things bringing up that point. Saying that, look, I think it depends on the age of the person and how much time per day they spend. I mean, I think that is, a key thing. I mean, I always remember being told, when I was a child, that, my mother said that, well, she saw some benefits of it, increasing hand-to-eye coordination and whatnot. But at the same time, there had to be that balance where, I played video games growing up, but at the same time, I also went outside. I went and, went fishing and did things and whatnot. And I think that is a key. It's horrible to say, but it comes back on the parenting, doesn't it? Again, where just having a kid sitting at home playing video games all day isn't great. There's benefits to aspects of it, but it's like anything. It's about, being in moderation. Yeah, I mean, with some parents using computer games as babysitters, just like TVs, it's not right. It's not right at all.
You look at this current generation as a whole. I have this argument about it. Is that you see how many kids now just glued to devices? As you say, you see so many kids just kids are almost
walking around
cuddled. Like they don't. Parents don't let them go do dangerous stuff like climbing trees or things like that, and they've got all these games and stuff that they play, and it's become I think it's personally become a much bigger problem because of that. I think that's mainly as well due to a lot of the technological advancements and how much we unfortunately now do rely on technology, because it is a slight problem. But I can definitely agree with those points.
There has to be some merit in, gaming, because I mean, you look now and there's all these pushes out there, like in the States, for example, at college, they're having esport teams. Over here in the UK, they've got that whole BBC and the Minecraft partnership where they're trying to get kids. I mean, I know one of my lecturers every Wednesday goes to a high school to teach games development, to high school students. So there has to be some aspects. But yeah, definitely not sitting there all day like a zombie.
Exactly.
Just
go and enjoy. I mean, I'd say I'm an old farm, not that old, but I get to the point now where I much prefer spending time gaming.
One of the interesting points that was made during the debate was when they actually talked specifically about educational ways. Like, can you imagine if, like, say for example, right, how difficult is, and you're right, we won't know until they're teenagers and adults. I mean, most likely more till they're adults, because like in men, for example, the frontal lobe, which kind of is responsible for making decisions like your moral compass, that's not fully developed till you're well into, what, 22, I believe, 22, 23. So yeah, I mean, it takes a while to see the effects. But thinking about how they could use games educationally, like, just imagine how difficult it is explaining to a child death, the whole concept of death, like when actually getting to fully grasp it. Because let's be honest, a lot of us just use abstract descriptions, you know. Whereas imagine having a game that actually explained it to them in a way that, you know, there's a lot of possibilities here. And yeah, see, I agree with the vision as well. I know that there's different studies that say different things and whatnot, but I mean, I know firsthand, right? I have better than 20/20 eyesight. I'm, you know, touch wood, I've always had really good eyesight. They called me Eagle Eye, you know, when I was in the forces, right? I mean, I just got really good eyesight. But when I play games or I'm sitting at a computer for a long time, I wear these, right? These are specific computer glasses that cut down an eye strain. And I'll be honest, I noticed a hell of a lot of a difference once I started using these. A huge difference. Because, you know, I was getting tension headaches from, especially because at work I was spending quite a lot of time in front of a computer screen, and that was when I started to notice it. But the minute I started taking these into work and using those for like my 9-hour working day, I was able to sleep better, my headaches were going away, I wasn't as stressed out. So no, I definitely agree with you on that point. You know, vision, I think, is a possible concern. I don't think there's enough evidence to say, you know, indisputably which way it, if it's bad or if, you know what I mean. I don't think there's enough evidence yet, but I do think that there has to be something in it.
I had something interesting said to me once when I went to get my eyes tested. Apparently,
Oh my God! Who the
even
hell
looking at reading a book
cares?
has the same effects as playing video games or looking at PCs, just because of how close you are to it.
Yeah, no, agreed. I think the problem is that a lot of them are a bit pricey, but I mean, I agree. I mean, I wanted to get a set for my stepdaughter. I just thought, you know, because she's been gaming and whatnot, and I said to myself, I was like, you know, it'd probably be a good idea to get her a pair that she likes, because it just, you know. But again, it's one of these things that depending on what country you're in. Like, the UK is horrible for that. Over here, they say, nah, there's nothing, there's no evidence that it harms your eyes. Whereas in the States, there's quite a lot of conflicting results, where they've said that, they've actually coined a term for it, computer vision syndrome, CVS, over in America, and allegedly it's a thing. So there you go.
There you go.
There you go. Well, that is us. We have went through all of our news for this evening.
We're out of time. But,
We're out of time. But that's what happens when we drum along and.
Congratulations, you are the winner.
Yes, yeah, that's a pharmacy. Well, right. Hey, Gim, Jay, thank you so much for joining me once again.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
The pleasure is all mine, gents. All mine. Thanks for everyone who tuned in. Hey, pretty things. It was nice to see you pop by. Like I said, we do this every Thursday live here on Beam at 9 p.m. But we also upload each video to YouTube. So that way, if you can't make a live show, it's always going to be there on the internet to have a look at later on. Speaking of YouTube, if you're watching this at a later date, whether it's been embedded somewhere or, you know, wherever the heck you're seeing it, you know, thanks so much for watching. If you liked it, make sure to hit like. If you don't like it, you know what to do. You can hit dislike. And please feel free to share and, you know, tweet out and whatnot. And, yeah, that is pretty much us. We will see you again next Thursday. Obviously, I'll be playing games on Friday and again on Sunday. But as far as Jungle Drums goes, that is it for this evening. And we will catch you next week. I need to do something real quick. I didn't alter my other scene. There we go. Now I'm actually ready. Right. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you later.
Bye.